such loss. La ilaha, la ilaha, la ilaha illallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. In the name of Allah, the All-Merciful, the Ever-Merciful, and blessings and peace be upon Prophet Muhammad. Dear viewers of Clearing the Mist, welcome to another episode of your program. In this episode, we are going to deal with some Quranic terms. Quranic, of course, is the adjective from Quran, and we are going to familiarize ourselves with some of the terms related to the Quran. You may have heard of some of these terms, and some of these terms may be new to you. There is no harm in reminding you of some of the terms which you may be familiar with, and there is also no harm, by the will of Allah, in introducing new terms and trying to explain them as simply as possible. You may have heard of tilawa, for example, tajweed, tartil, ta'wil, tafsir, and basmala. We are going to consider each one of these in some detail. Let's go to the screen and try to know what each one of these terms means. First, we have tilawa, or if we add the definite article, it's at-tilawa, at-tilawa. And by at-tilawa, we mean three different things. The first of these things is studying the Quran, which may not be the most frequently used meaning of the word. The second meaning of the word tilawa is meditating and reflecting on the Quran. Again, it may not be the most frequently used sense of the word. We come now to the most frequently used sense of the term, which is reciting the Quran. Then in many cases we use tilawa to refer to reciting the glorious or the ever glorious Quran. How about tajweed? Do we have more than one way of reciting the glorious Quran? The answer, dear viewers, brothers and sisters, is yes. We have more than one way of reciting the glorious Quran. One of these ways, one of these recommended ways actually, is tajweed. By tajweed, as you can see on the screen, is meant recitation of the noble, you can say noble Quran or the glorious Quran, because in the Quran itself, the Quran is being described as Al-Quran Al-Majid. Al-Quran Al-Majid. And Al-Majid is often translated into glorious or ever glorious with a hyphen in between. Tajweed is recitation of the noble Quran with precise articulation, pronunciation, and exact intonation. Then we must have correct or precise articulation or pronunciation at the same time. We should observe the exact intonation. In this case, we are doing tajweed. Another way of reciting the glorious Quran is tartil, tartil. And this is measured recitation of the noble Quran, taking extreme care with regard to the rules of slow reading. Then the characteristic or an important characteristic of tartil is that it is slow reading or slow recitation of the glorious Quran. It's measured recitation of the noble Quran, taking extreme care with regard to the rules of slow reading. It can also mean chanting the Quran, although chanting may have some connotations. You can say chanting the Quran if you like. The Prophet, blessings and peace be upon him, said, whoever does not chant the Quran is not one of us. And by chanting the Quran here is meant simply tartil al-Quran. Then it's probably better to say yurattil al-Quran, which is the verb from tartil. Tartil is the al-masdar from which we have the word yurattil, the verb yurattil. Then if you don't like the word chant, you can say yurattil. You can use the Arabic word, because as we said on several occasions before, sometimes for lack of a better translation we have to resort to an approximation in the English language. Ta'wil. What about a new term relating to the Quran is at-ta'wil, which appears on the screen as ta'wil. By adding the definite article, we have some kind of assimilation. The la becomes a ta to become similar to the first consonant in the word ta'wil. Then it becomes at-ta'wil, which can be translated into interpretation or elucidation or explanation or final fulfillment, which is a meaning a little different or slightly different from all the others. But usually when we say ta'wil, we mean interpretation or elucidation or explanation of the glorious, the meanings of the glorious Quran. Tafsir, another term is tafsir. How about tafsir? Tafsir is a commentary. Tafsir is a commentary. There are several tafsirs of the meaning of the Quran, including Ibn Kathir, Al-Jalalain, and Al-Qurtubi. These are only three of the most widely used and the most well-known tafasir. Tafasir, books including tafsir, are called tafasir, and we have actually many others, but these are among the most frequently used tafasir. How about ta'awudh? At-ta'awudh, as I said before, sometimes for convenience we omit the definite article just to make the transliteration, which is the representation of one language using the letters or the alphabet of another language. In this case, using the Roman or the Latin alphabet to represent Arabic words. In some cases, of course, we have to resort to some symbols which are not found originally in the English language to stand for the sounds which don't occur in English but occur in Arabic, like a, kha, dha, and so on and so forth, or da, and so on and so forth. We tend to underline these to differentiate da from da, or dha from the, and so on and so forth. Ta'awudh is saying, I take refuge in Allah from the accursed devil, or ash-shaytan, or Satan, if you would like an English word. Then before we start reading the glorious Quran, it is recommended, or we are required as Muslims, to say at-ta'awudh. I take refuge in Allah from the accursed devil. A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. And here is the transliteration of the statement. How about al-basmala? Al-basmala, if you add the definite article, it's simply saying Bismillah. Bismillah. We always start our program by saying in the name of Allah, which is a translation of Bismillah. Then after you do a ta'awudh, you should also say Bismillah, or Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the All Merciful, the Ever Merciful. And this statement is usually made by every Muslim who is about to embark on, to start anything that is halal. Not only before you read the Quran, you say Al-Basmala or Bismillah Rahman Rahim, but it is also recommended for a Muslim to start any halal thing, all right, by saying Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Of course, we cannot imagine a situation in which one is embarking on something unlawful or illegal and starting by saying Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Of course, you do this only if you are embarking on anything that is halal. The first verse of Surah Al-Fatiha. Al-Basmala is also another name for the first surah, the first chapter, which is the chapter of Al-Fatiha, or the opening chapter in the glorious Quran. Then Al-Basmala is simply to say Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, or the name of saying, of the act of saying Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, and it is also the name or one of the names of the opening chapter of the glorious Quran, which is Surah Al-Fatiha, which is Surah Al-Fatiha. In the glorious Quran we have قال الله تعالى أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I'm applying what I have just said to myself. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فإذا قرأت القرآن فاستعذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. النحل الآية 98. This can be rendered into English as, so when you want to recite the Quran, seek refuge with Allah from shaitan or Satan, the outcast, which means the cursed one. And this is chapter 16, verse 98. This brings us to the end of this episode, in which we tried to define some of the terms related to the glorious Quran, especially the different ways of how to recite the Quran, and some rules pertaining to what we should do before we start or embark on reading the glorious Quran, and so on and so forth. I hope you have familiarized yourselves with some of the terms which might not be familiar to you, and I hope I have reminded you of some of the terms which may already be familiar to you. We should always remind, because reminding benefits the believer as an Islamic rule and as the glorious Quran tells us. Dear viewers, brothers and sisters, until we meet again, I leave you in the care of Allah. أستودعكم الله وأترككم في أمانه ورعايته. And until we meet again in another episode of your program Clearing the Mist. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Merciful are you, King of all the kings, have ownership to all of each and everything. Indeed, I am your slave, created from the dust, a traveler in this world. I shouldn't feel such loss.